now. It'd be easy for me to read a blurb off, but I'd much rather hear it in your own words. Starting with you, Chloe, what do you do day to day? What is your work?
I am an investigative journalist for the BBC, mostly focusing on audio. So I work in a department called long form audio. We make documentaries and podcast series. And so most of the time I am glued to my computer or I'm glued to my telephone speaking to people. Pre-COVID, I was out and about meeting as many people as I could. And the idea is to dig away at a story and try and find something fresh and new to tell about it.
Fantastic. And we'll hear about those in a moment. And Gail, how does that compare to your work?
Well, we're actually in the same department, but we don't physically work together. So I manage a team of investigative journalists, about 15 of us, and we make 30 radio documentaries a year. They do have a life on TV and elsewhere as well. Predominantly a programme called File on 4, which is on BBC Radio 4 here in the UK. I think there's some international people here. And then we also do podcasts, increasingly, investigative podcasts, which I suppose we might talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, which has been a big, it's been a big Brave New World. We get a lot of podcast links flying all over the place at Rebel Book Club. So just to warm up really quickly before we get into some of your work, what's the best non-fiction book that you have read? Oh, look, there's a crowd. They're coming. Hello, West London. Give us a wave. There we go. They can hear us too. Chloe, best non-fiction book that you've read recently that you'd love to tell us about?
It's actually, I wish I could say it was more recent. I came to it a bit later. It's a book called Assad or We Burn the Country by an investigative journalist called Sam Dagger. And what I love about this book is that it's exactly the way that I like to consume my investigative stories. It's narratives layered on top of each other. You follow various characters through the progression of the war in Syria, and he unfolds the war and unpicks what's going on in the Assad regime through narrative stories. And I loved it. It should be taken with a pinch of salt because everybody he's interviewed in it is on one side of the conflict. But he's an excellent journalist and he's had real insight into the Assad regime and how it works from Assad insiders who've defected mostly.
Wow. And that links beautifully to a book that I've just read, which is about a book club that started during the Assad regime. That as Homs was being destroyed, they went and collected all these books from the rubble and built an underground book library and ran loads of classes. And for like 4 years, it sort of fed people's minds and gave them hope. So I love those kind of stories. They really take us behind the frontline stories that we hear in the media. And Gail, what about you? What's a non-fiction book you'd love to share?
Well, I have it here, so I didn't forget. So it's called The Frayed Atlantic Edge.
Okay.
It's by a man called David Gange. So it's not investigative, and I think that's why I like it, because it's a bit of a break from what we normally do. But he basically gets in a kayak and paddles the whole of the Atlantic coast of Britain and Ireland. So it's a different take on so many things: our history, our relationship with the sea, our relationship with each other, community. And there's a small element of Bear Grylls survival in there as well, because he's paddling alone on this massive epic trip. It's really good.
Oh, great. 2 books I've never heard of, so that's a good start to the session.